Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, the one sales skill that you need is to master storytelling. And the good news is I have Mr. Master Storytelling right here. Mark Carpenter, welcome to the show.
David, thank you so much. And I love that you led in with that because I would totally agree with you. This is one of the skills that you really need.
Absolutely. So tell us, Mark, a little bit about your professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today, and then we'll use that as the springboard for our interview.
You bet. I worked for 20 years in corporate marketing and public relations. And of course, there's a lot of storytelling that are involved in that. But I didn't really focus so much on storytelling there. I made a transition in my career to facilitation and training. And in that realm, storytelling became even more and more important. This is something that I do fairly naturally. And it wasn't until my wife gave me a nudge about 6 years ago and said, well, this is what you ought to write a book about. You ought to write a book about how do you turn everyday real experiences into stories that teach important principles. And my first reaction to that was, yeah, that's not a book. Everybody knows how to do that. And the more I talked to people, the more I realized, no, people need some guidance on this. And so that was kind of the impetus of the book, Master Storytelling, and then the workshop that we've created along with that. And so I'm in the process and in the business of helping build a world of intentional storytellers to turn real life experiences into stories that teach, lead, sell, and inspire.
Now, for some reason, and I'm guessing you know why, this is an extremely hot topic right now. People are like, I think we got to get better at telling our story. We need to do leadership stories and brand stories and origin stories and client stories. Why do you think this is so hot right now in this environment?
Well, David, I wish I had a really, really good answer for you on that. But I've noticed the same thing, that it's become this really big topic over the last several years. And I also want to make the point that the storytelling that we talk about is different than some of those things that you mentioned. It's not the origin story. It's not the brand story. It's story with a purpose, and specifically with a purpose to teach something or to lead change, inspire action, or just really make a connection to people and your product and your services that you offer. And so there's a lot of times we got to get our brand story down. We got to get our origin story down. That's great in terms of just explaining. But the storytelling that we focus on is really storytelling that leads to action, which is a little bit different, but that's our unique niche in the market.
Yes, for sure. Well, let's talk about this because I think there are a lot of goobers in your business, a lot of goofballs, just like there's a lot of goofballs in my business. And there seems to be one popping up every 20 minutes, some other storytelling guru that just read some book and is now parroting some craziness. Talk a little bit about what's the surface level skill of storytelling versus the real motivating and inspiring to take action kind of story that you're talking about. So people that might be listening to us, Mark, and they go, I took a storytelling class. I had a guy come in and we did some things around story. What's the surface level? And then what's 3 layers below the iceberg?
Well, the surface level is I'm conveying some information. And these are stories that you tell when you come home from work, or in many of our cases these days, you walk upstairs from work or walk downstairs from work, and they say, how was your day today? What happened? And you tell the story of your day. And it's just conveying information. And a lot of times they think even the origin stories that people talk about in businesses, those are conveying information stories. And so that to me is the surface level. The deeper level is, what do we learn? What do we take away from that experience that can help the listener in their goals and to achieve what they're trying to achieve, and to really mesh my goals and their goals together? Because stories are great connective tissue just because of the way that we as human beings think and work.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to the ugly. Let's get to the good, the bad, and the ugly. What are some of the storytelling mistakes? So when people come to you for your consulting, your coaching, even your certified trainers that you have out there, what is some of the storytelling disasters that you've seen? And then what would be the opposite of those as far as righting the ship and getting the story right so it actually causes some action?
Yeah. And I think one of them comes from what you just mentioned earlier. Oh, I know how to tell stories. I've been doing this all my life. Or somebody told me once about telling stories, or I took this class on writing a novel, so I know how to tell a story. And in those cases, a lot of times they're putting everything in the kitchen sink into their story. So it goes on and on and on and on. And you've got your listener sitting on the other side saying, land this plane, please get me someplace that we're going. And so that's one of the things, is just not knowing, what do I need to include? What do I need to take out? Part of that comes from the second big issue that I see in terms of the type of storytelling that we're talking about. And that is knowing what your purpose is. Because if I don't know what the purpose is, what am I trying to accomplish with this story, then I'm probably going to wander around in hopes that I find a point eventually. But if I know what my purpose is, if I know what I'm trying to teach, lead, sell, and inspire, then that helps me focus in, edit the story down a little bit to the essential parts so that it gets to the key point that I'm trying to make in a more efficient and productive way for both the teller and the listener.
Yes. So can you give us like the building block formula that you teach, and what does every good story that will inspire action, what are the building blocks or the ingredients?
And it's interesting because I mentioned that about, I took a class on writing a novel, so I know how to tell a story. A lot of ways, it is the same key principles that we include in there, but it's applied a little bit differently. So first thing is you've got to have relatable characters. You've got to have somebody that the listener can hear your story and say, yeah, been in that kind of situation. I can relate to that. So I may not be able to relate to somebody who's argued a case before the Supreme Court, but I can relate to somebody who's had an argument with a coworker. So what's the connective tissue there? So you need to get to that point that they're characters that the listener can relate to. That's part of the connection that you're going to make in there. The second thing is there needs to be some kind of worthwhile goal. What are you trying to accomplish? Now, sometimes when I teach this, people say, well, there's no huge goal that I was trying to accomplish there. You notice I didn't say huge goal. I just said worthwhile goal. I tell a story sometime about the day that I was driving to the airport. Well, my goal was to catch my flight. That's not some huge, big thing. But in the context of that moment, it was important to me so I could get to a client. People can relate to that. They can understand those types of situations. So there has to be some kind of goal that you're trying to accomplish. The third thing is there needs to be something that gets in the way of that goal. If everything just goes swimmingly and just goes perfectly along like the lazy river of life, well, people are going to look at that and say, so what? If there's no problem that I'm trying to accomplish here, why do I need to pay attention? Why do I need to listen to you? Or maybe that goes back to the relatability and they say, things don't go that perfectly for me, even though they went perfectly for you. So there has to be something that gets in the way of that goal. And then finally, there needs to be some kind of resolution. There needs to be some kind of change that happens at the end that shows that either through the right set of behaviors, I accomplished the goal that I was trying to and overcame this obstacle, or potentially by not doing the right thing, I learned from the mistake that I made and from not accomplishing that goal. So there's a couple of different outcomes that you could come to. And a lot of times those learning stories are just as powerful, some cases more powerful than the stories where we show a great success.
Yes, for sure. And as you said, it makes you more relatable, right? You take yourself off the pedestal and then people go, wow, this wasn't easy for Mark either. And now I'm much more on board that this is something worth accomplishing.
Absolutely.
Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. So, where do people find impactful stories? Like, do you recommend that we keep a story journal, or tell us where to find them? Tell us where to record them.
Absolutely. I tell people that we love stories because we live stories. What is your life other than a collection of just little stories, little events that have happened? And you want to get in the habit of capturing those moments where you have an emotional reaction, any kind of emotion. It could be positive, negative. It could be happy. It could be angry. It could be frustrated. It could be joyful. And in those moments, there is likely a lesson. You may not know in the moment what that lesson is, but if you can capture that moment, then you may come back to it later and say, ooh, there's the lesson that's embedded within that moment that I need to use to teach. So yeah, I tell people, get in the habit of capturing those moments when you have some kind of an emotional reaction. Personally, I have an iPad mini that I carry around with me almost everywhere I go. And I have a little place in there that says potential stories. And when something like that happens, I just take a 2 or 3 sentence note to myself about what happened, why it was impactful, and then I just park it there. Now, there are times that I can think in the moment what the lesson is. There are other times that I have to stop and go back later and look at what the lesson might be. But just get in the habit of doing that. We actually have on our website a little document. It's a free download. It's called the Story Catcher. And it guides people to that. It guides people to what are those moments that I should be looking for? What are the things that I need to catch to just pay attention for potential stories that I could use to teach, lead, sell, and inspire at some point in the future? So yeah, to your point, I encourage people all the time, capture those things. Capture them in the moment. Don't try to hold them in your brain because your brain's going to forget them. But capture them someplace that you can come back to them when you're looking for a story to make a point, and you will likely have something that's already happened in your life.
Yeah, how about that? Now, from a sales standpoint, is it better to have a company story, a story about me, a client story? How do you sort of know in which context, what kind of story would really have an impact?
Yeah. And again, it comes down to what is your purpose? What is your goal with that story? So if my goal is to help a client see how my product will help people like them, then I might want to tell them a story from the perspective of a client like them, where they gained a success, they accomplished a goal through using my products. So what was the thing that they were trying to overcome? What was the challenge that they had to their goal? How did my solution help them overcome that? That would be a story that would be effective in that case. If I'm really just trying to get somebody to pay attention, for example, if I'm trying to get somebody to know and trust me, then I might want to tell a story about me and how I came to where I am right now and why I have such a desire to help you as a client to achieve your goals.
For sure. Now, I can channel our audience, Mark. They're already saying, okay, I'm excited. I'm going to run out. I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to pop over to masterstorytelling.com. But Mark, I don't have the gift of gab. I'm not a good storyteller. I am not a raconteur. And yes, my friends, you can look up raconteur. It's on Wikipedia. You'll learn some things. I'm not a great storyteller. Like I'm the last one that can tell, with Thanksgiving and the holidays and the office party. I bore people out of my mind. And I'm just afraid that if I collect this amazing story bank, I have all these strategies, I won't be able to deliver that story effectively. What do you say to that objection?
Well, David, I'll even take that one step further and say, I'm the person that I tell stories and nobody wants to listen to me and everybody turns me off. It almost goes the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So being that obnoxious person who likes to answer questions with questions, I'm going to come back to you and just ask you a simple question. What is a skill that you now have that you didn't previously have?
Oh boy, there's a ton of them. Even riding a bicycle, I once had no idea how to ride a bicycle.
There you go. That's a nice, simple one. That's one that I pull to a lot of times too. So before you rode a bicycle, could you say, oh, I'm a good bicycle rider?
I could not.
No. So how did you get to be a good bicycle rider?
Training and practice.
That's it. The same answer is true with storytelling. It's not a gift. It's a skill. And skills can be developed. even from those who struggle with them. I am actually consulting with a guy right now who is transitioning to doing some speaking from the stage. And I'm working with him on stories. He has admitted this is not a natural skill for me, but he is getting so good. It's just so cool to see that he has developed this skill because A, he put the effort into learning how. B, he's tried it. So there's the other thing. Just like riding a bicycle, you can't get instruction and look at the bicycle and say, okay, now I know how to do it. Now I'm going to be good. You actually have to get on the seat and try it. The same thing is true with storytelling. You have to get on and you're going to have some wobbly times. You're going to have some times when you tip over. But to your point, David, you get some coaching. You get direction from somebody who knows better. And that's what gets you straightened out. That's what gets you feeling confident. And then all of a sudden, you're riding that bicycle with ease and it feels more natural to you. Now, there may be times when you still have to think about what you're doing, but it becomes a more natural skill for you when you develop it. So for those people, my biggest message there is remember, storytelling is not a gift. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed.
Huge. Absolutely agree. You mentioned something a few minutes ago, Mark, that I want to go back to, which is how to sharpen a story and sharpen a story's impact by removing things, right? So removing extraneous detail, removing, things that are interesting but not vital. Talk to us a little bit about that story honing or story editing skill so we can really deliver stories that have that impact that you were talked about.
I'll go back to a Stephen Covey principle in the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind. What is the goal of the story? What are you trying to accomplish? That to me is the biggest step and the biggest focal point that will help you to edit out extraneous stuff. If you know what point you're trying to make at the end. I remember hearing a guy one time, and it was in a non-professional setting. He was telling a story that he was trying to make a point with. And then he kept saying, so it was a Tuesday afternoon, or maybe it was a Thursday. No, it was a Tuesday. I'm like, okay, we don't really even need to know what day of the week it was. That's not important for what you're getting to. And he had so many distracting little details in there that by the end, I couldn't figure out what point he was trying to make. Now, maybe it wasn't clear to him. Maybe that's why he struggled with that. But that's the first point I always start with is what's the point you're trying to make? And then as you think about the details of the story, ask yourself the question, does this detail help make my point? And if the answer is no, then leave it out. If the answer is yes, keep it in. Because sometimes people do the other thing. They get focused on their point and they go from the beginning of the story to the point of the story, but they don't make the connecting tissue between. And so they leave out important details. So consider, is this point going to help make, or is this detail going to help make my point that I'm trying to make by the end of the story?
And we leave out as much of the extraneous stuff as possible while maintaining the integrity and the impact of the story.
Yep, exactly.
I remember last Wednesday. No, actually it was Saturday. No, hang on, it was Sunday.
You're doing this to me on purpose.
I'm just messing with you. So I'm fascinated by in a conversation, right? Because it's not like, and I'm guessing this also applies to keynote speeches and so forth, but I'm talking about a sales conversation. There's an entry point into the story, and then there's an exit point out of the story where you're supposed to stick the landing. Do people wrestle with that about like, how do I get into a story? Or is it as simple as, Mark, let me tell you a story. I mean, and then off we are, we're off to the races. Talk about the entry point and the exit point and how people can develop a comfort level with weaving those into a sales conversation.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And you're right. People do struggle with both of those, both the entry point and the exit point. Sometimes that entry point just needs to be as clear as saying what you said. Let me share with you an example of where this happened or of how somebody accomplished this. Let me share with you an example of how storytelling can be impactful. That could even be an entry point with mine. And then I'll tell them an experience that a client of mine has had with it or that I've had personally with storytelling being impactful. So sometimes it is as simple as saying, well, let me just share an example of that. You could even say, let me tell you a story that illustrates that point. And I think that's fine too. Now, That's an easy entry. But then you have to know the first thing that you're going to say. And that's the stage setting. So that's the current state. What is the current state that that person was in that will point out what goal they're trying to lead to, what got in the way of that goal, and then how they changed to accomplish that goal at the end. And so that's the first segment of it, is just setting the current stage. This is a stage where it's going back to the question you asked earlier. How much do you leave in? How much do you take out? You need enough detail for people to understand what it is you're talking about and what is their challenge, that they get the point, but not so much that they've gotten lost in the beginning part of the story. And we have coaching, we have ways to help people to do that. To the end of the story. Again, the thing that will help you end your story well is understanding what point you're trying to make. And I don't encourage people to say, and the moral of this story is, but that's really what we're getting to. But we don't want to moralize. A lot of times it comes down to, can you even ask a question at the end? So what do we learn from that? So what is the takeaway? Now, as you're speaking on the stage, a lot of times you can't get people to respond to that, but you can ask that as rhetorical. So what do we learn from that? We learn that, and we can get the point in right there at the end. So knowing your point is going to help you get to the end of your story and how to wrap it up, because it needs to wrap up with what that point is and how that point was learned.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. So let's say that a prospect, we're in a prospecting sales conversation, and the person asks the dreaded question, well, Mark, have you ever worked with a company exactly like ours, in exactly our industry, in the state of Kentucky, that is having a conversation with you on a Monday afternoon, right? Some ridiculous thing like that. Yeah. And then you tell a story that would be of a comparable situation. And then perhaps one way to stick that landing is, so what I'm trying to share with you is we work with clients just like you all the time. Would that be sort of a little kind of fortune cookie tag on the end of the story that sticks the landing, or is it deeper than that?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure I'd go to just like you, especially if somebody gets to the ridiculous detail of, the specifics that you were putting out there. But I might shift the point just a little bit and say, we work with people that are close enough to just like you that I'm confident that you're going to get the same benefit that they got. Because nice. Isn't that what we're trying to show? Is that you're going to get the benefits that I'm promising to you with this. And that's the thing that people need to know. The cool thing about what I work with, and really, frankly, about what a lot of your clients work with, is that there are things that work across industries. I don't have to have worked with somebody exactly like you, Mr. Client, for you to be able to see that there is value in what I'm going to bring to you and to your organization. And I think that sometimes maybe we need to fight against that assumption that you have to have worked with somebody exactly like me. I might even say to those people, there's nobody that's exactly like you because you're you. If there's somebody exactly like you, you wouldn't be in business because you wouldn't have a unique selling proposition. So let me tell you about a story about somebody who's similar to you, and we'll make the connection to how that might work with you.
Yeah, very nice. So I'm imagining, and I'd love to tap into your wisdom on this, once your clients start to develop this skill, they start to develop this inventory of stories. I'm imagining that there's a huge sense of clarity that comes just by collecting and curating these stories around what you do and what you sell. Talk about the benefits of, like, once I tell some stories around this, I now have a completely new level of clarity about my value, about my clients, about what we really do to help people move the needle.
Yeah, right on. And I'd say not only clarity, but confidence. That it's going to give me confidence that I can address your concerns. I can share this with you. And it's not about arguing price and feature and benefit. It's about making that connection. I go back to this a lot when we talk about selling. Why do people buy? What is it that drives people's purchasing decision? I'm going to throw that to you as an honest question, David. What do you think? Why do people buy from one person and not another?
I think it's the seller's level of certainty.
I think that's a lot of it too. I heard this from somebody else, so I can't attribute this directly to me. People buy from people that they know, trust, and like. How do you get people to know you better? How do you get people to trust you more? How do you get people to like you more? I guarantee it's not by sharing prices, features, and benefits. But telling a story will get you all of those things.
Yeah.
And so it's about connecting you to that other person. People buy from people. I mean, unless they're like at a vending machine buying a candy bar, they're typically buying from people, particularly in service sales. They are buying from people. So they need to know, trust, and like you. And one of the best ways that they can do that is to hear you tell a story that connects them to you. And it feels like we're on the same side. We're on the same page. We're simpatico. We belong together. That's the kind of message that good storytelling will send in the sales environment.
I want to go a little bit behind the scenes, if that's okay. Tell us the various ways that people tap in to the master storytelling empire. So I know that there are live-led training, there's online, there's digital. You certify corporate trainers to deliver this content inside their companies. Walk us through all the different investable opportunities in your world.
Yeah, and you hit many of them right there. We have a workshop, the same title as the book, Master Storytelling. We will do that in person in a half-day format with organizations, with intact teams. We also have a virtual version of that we do in 3 95-minute segments. We find that it's best virtual to break it up a little bit. I don't like sitting through 4 hours online, and I don't think anybody else does either. And so we try to break that up into those 3 segments. We have an on-demand version of it that is just recorded. To me, that's not nearly as powerful, because part of the power that you get is the interaction with the other people in the workshop and the ability to ask questions and to apply what you're learning on the spot. We also do storytelling coaching. I talked about this client that I'm working with that's starting to present from the stage, and we'll do one-on-one coaching sessions, either virtually or in person, with people to help them specifically with building their storytelling skills and building their specific stories for their specific purposes. There's a wide variety. Of course, the other thing we didn't mention that's really kind of the entry level is the book. The book is available out there. Wherever Amazon is available, the book is available.
Right.
So that's easy access for everybody in formats all the way from hardback to paperback to ebook to audiobook.
Nice. Now, I know with the book, you have a co-author. Tell us about how you and Daryl got connected and how you worked together on the book and on the business.
This is part of the longer version of the story that I told you earlier when my wife made the comment that I had to write a book about this. I had started to kind of investigate that and ask questions about it, and I was gaining some interest in it. I started to outline the book and was thinking about working on it myself. And my dear friend and colleague, Daryl Harmon, called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm in between jobs. Wonder if we could just catch up over lunch." And we sat down over lunch. I started talking about this, and it was like the light bulb that goes on top of your head in cartoons. This light bulb hit me, and I went, "Oh, Daryl's got some time. He could help on this." And I kind of pitched him the idea of co-authoring this with him. He bit. He was all in. And so we worked on developing this together. And honestly, it's a better product than I would have come up with myself by co-authoring with my friend Daryl.
Very nice. And he also does some of the delivery.
Yeah. And so he is in the realm of human resources leadership and training and development. And he has subsequently gotten recruited into one of those types of positions. And so he doesn't do as much delivery now as we did as we started out. But we have co-facilitated this together a number of times. And he's fantastic and makes a huge contribution. We talk all the time. So he's still making huge contributions to the growth of master storytelling.
Tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. Well, as we're wrapping up, I've got 2 final questions for you. The final question is going to be, where can people get connected and stay connected to more Mark Carpenter brilliance? But even before we go there, if folks were to take one overarching idea from the real found power of storytelling and mastering this as a leadership skill, mastering this as a sales skill, what do you hope that one overarching idea would be?
Well, it's hard to narrow it down to one. But I think the one that jumps to my mind is be intentional. Be intentional about your storytelling. A lot of times we hear storytelling is important, storytelling is useful, storytelling is helpful. And so we just tell stories to tell stories. Be intentional about your purpose. We've talked about this several times, but be intentional. What's the point that I'm trying to make? And be intentional in crafting that story to that point, not just telling a story to tell a story. So I think that's the biggest key they tend to emphasize a lot.
Fantastic. Now, where can people go to get connected and stay connected to you, Mark, and to Master Storytelling, the book, websites, resources? Where can we send people to connect more with you?
Well, let's start with the website, which is master-storytelling.com. So you have to have the little dash between master and storytelling to get there. And if your listeners would like a free copy of the ebook, I offer that on a special page just for podcast listeners. So it's master-storytelling.com/podcast gift. And so I'm sure you can get that into your show notes.
Yes.
But you go there, give me your email address so I know where to send it, and we'll get you connected to a free copy of the Master Storytelling ebook. So there's one place is our website. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can look up Mark Carpenter in this space and that book heading. You'll find me. And we also have a Master Storytelling LinkedIn page. We also have a Master Storytelling Facebook page that's out there. So there's another way that you can connect with us. And you can even connect with me directly if you'd like. Mark@master-storytelling.com is my email. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have on the content. Would love to hear from you.
Tremendous. All right. And all of those links will be in the show notes directly under this episode with the amazing Mark Carpenter when you go to thesellingshow.com. Mark, thank you for dropping all those value bombs. We could talk for hours, and we have to have you back on the show too.
Would love that. Thank you, David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.